Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving, purpose-minded women who've written nonfiction books and want to amplify their message beyond the book. I'm a college professor, and when I'm not doing that, I am speaking, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women who have written books how to use their books to make a bigger difference, have more impact, and purpose. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. So glad you're here and you take your time to listen into the podcast. I so appreciate you. I'll say that all the time because I really do appreciate you from my heart. And today I'm talking with Dane Espegard. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Dane. Dane is a culture consultant who teaches and helps execute the implementation of a culture centered around dream achieving. Dream achieving. I love that. And he teaches a system that is bottom up and puts the emphasis on the development and personal lives of the team members. And he brings his successful teaching to all of you who are wanted and willing to take it in his book, The Dream Machine, which I can't wait to hear more about. Welcome, Dane Espegard.
Thank you. I'm excited for the conversation.
Me too. So let's just jump right in. Okay, so I gave you a little bit of an introduction, but tell us about who you are and then a little bit about the work you do.
You bet. So I'm happily married to my wife, Brooklyn, for almost 8 years now. And we've got two little daughters. One just turned 6 last week. Her name's Ela. And then a 4-year-old named Izzy. And so those two keep us really busy, which is great. And, you know, in terms of me personally, I always start with family. I'm very family focused, number one. I'm also extremely entrepreneurial. Also very competitive. I love sports, traveling, and really anything that kind of puts me on a team. So professionally, I got my start with I would like to say pretty common job. It's a little out of the norm, but it's a popular job for college students. I sold Cutco knives as a college student to pay my way through university at Wisconsin-Madison. So that was kind of my first introduction to the business world and in sales and, you know, handling rejection and all of that. And so that's also where I was exposed to personal growth for the first time. And so I did that seasonally during college, and that's what allowed me to pay my way through school. And then when I graduated, I stayed with Cutco as a career position, partly because I wasn't sure what else to do, and I had success with the company, but I also really liked their culture of personal growth and experiences and mentorship. And so I climbed the ranks with Cutco for the first couple of years out of college. And I'm still a division manager with that company and operate a 6-state area for Cutco up in the northern states. Oh. And so I've been doing that for quite some time. And, you know, I've been doing it for a while, which has allowed me to kind of free up some of my time now to pursue some passion projects, such as the book and the stuff that I'm doing now with Dreams.
Yeah, I love that. And especially you were consistent and you grew with the company and you pursued your own kind of passions and dreams. That sounds great. All right. So I'm intrigued by the title of your book, The Dream Machine, The Dream Machine. So tell us about the book.
So the book it's meant to be an A to Z guide. So essentially any business owner or team leader or anyone that operates a team is able to read it and go from, you know, zero culture centered around dreams to a fully operating system. And the reason that it's called the Dream Machine is it's meant to be a culture system that really puts the focus on the individuals. So it's not this arduous, it's not an EOS or something that takes a whole lot of implementation, but it really puts the focus on the individuals to say, hey, this is for you and run with it. And I've seen this work in a lot of organizations where, for me, it was based on a need. I was introduced to the dreams concept from an author named Matthew Kelly. And I got to hear Matthew speak in 2007. And that's when I made my first ever dreams list. It was really invigorating. I loved it. I took it back to my team, but it was kind of like many other things where I heard it at a conference and it was neat for about a month and then it kind of fizzled out. But then I went back to that concept in 2012 when I was moving territories and kind of starting a team from scratch again. And I loved the concept, but Matthew Kelly's concept involves having somebody like a salaried person, and their job is in HR basically is to help people with their dreams. Well, I didn't have a budget for that. And so I kind of had to figure out how to bootstrap it and almost reverse it to say it's, the onus isn't on us as the organization, but it's on the individual. And so I started that in end of 2012, 2013. And then ever since then, it's been evolving into what it is today. And now I get the amazing pleasure of helping other organizations, start the process as well, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. A lot of growth too. All right. So tell us about if there's a small team. This podcast is focusing on authors, small business owners, entrepreneurs, but particularly authors who want to build and amplify their message way beyond the book, right? So let's say there's an author and they have a couple people working part-time and even contract people working with them. How does the dream approach affect a team like that?
And I think it's actually where it has the biggest impact is just on the person. Uh-huh. And so, the book is written from a place of how do you implement this into your team? But one of the most important principles in the book is that the leader has to be willing to live it themselves. And so, we could just stop right there and say, if it's an author and it's a business of one, which I am with the book and what I've been building, and it really, all of the principles of kind of living a life focused around trying to achieve your dreams, I think anybody can get behind that as long as they understand it's not some floofy, we can do anything and have everything in the moment. It's like there's definitely, it's rooted in reality. And the whole theme of the book is written from a place of when there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. Mm-hmm. And so it's really meant to say, what are all the things that would give me joy throughout my life and give me purpose, right? Because when we have something that we're working towards, we're so much more efficient with our time. We're able to overcome obstacles faster because we know where we're going. And so the idea with this dreams concept is just having people figure out 100, 200, 300. We have people on our team with over 1,000 dreams that are on their list. And so they're never short of having something in their scope, if you will, for the next 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, whatever it might be.
That's very interesting. And I can't even imagine that. But I guess if you sit down and over time and keep adding things to the list, you can have them. Are there certain things that fall in the category of dreams?
Are there things that fall into the category of dreams? I don't think that there's anything so in this actually, I think will help with the whole idea of conceptualizing 1,000. It's like, that's wild. I think at first people think dream, you associate bigness, right? Like a dream house, a dream trip, a dream. Okay. So really anything could be a dream. We have people on our list, like the individual that I was just referencing, his name's Alex. Alex is 23. This guy is very unique. And he has about 1,100 dreams that are on his list. And he gets last year, I think he got done something like a little over 100 dreams on his list accomplished. Now, when you dig through the layers of that, there are all sorts of things like this year, one of his that he completed was doing karaoke for the first time. So he's never done it before. It's a new experience. It's out of his comfort zone. So a lot of the things can be small, just, hey, I've never done that and I want to experience that. And some of the things on the list, we go through 9 categories. They're not checking off the list items like, hey, I traveled to Argentina. Check, I did that, right? But there's other things there's a whole category of family and relationships. And so in that category, for instance, for me, I have, always be engaged in my wife's pursuits, right? Another one is, there's probably 5 in there of how I want to be as a dad. So they're not items that I go and say, okay, I was a great dad that I check it off the list, but they're more just maybe ways that I want to live. And there's a lot of that's on the list as well. That
makes a lot of sense to me. What are some of the other categories? You mentioned family. What's another?
We always start people off with travel because I think that's the easiest the whole thing is an abundance exercise, right? So I start people with travel because I think it's easy for them to say yes to a lot of different places in the world. Then we go to adventure, material, financial/vocation. Then we get into some of like maybe the deeper topics, which would be family relationships, health, both emotional and physical, We go through creative, like new things that you want to learn or experience. Then we go through spirituality and faith, and then we end with legacy.
Yes, that makes sense. And when you have the categories, I can now imagine more, like
Yes.
more than I could at the beginning of this conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's really great. So what's the difference between a goal and a dream?
I think just by using the word goal, subconsciously we bet, we want to hit our goals. And I've been in the sales, arena, if you will, for 20 years. In the last 15, my job has been to help people to set goals and achieve those goals. And all too often, somebody sets something that is, very, very doable. And that's not the purpose of a goal. The goal is meant to stretch us, to kind of, stretch our capabilities and capacities and who we become in the process and being able to reach further the next time. But if we're always picking things that are within reach, that doesn't really, the whole purpose of it kind of disappears. So I find that when we use the word goal, dream, when we use the word dream, what it does is it allows people to be ungrounded. And I think that's really important during the process, is not what do I think is an achievable goal, but hey, let's have some fun. What are just things in your lifetime that you'd be really, lit up by if you got the opportunity to do? And we don't really ever in the brainstorming process ask, how am I going to do this? It's just, if it sounds cool, write it down. Mm-hmm. And there's something that, sticks with me from younger years when I got to go to some Tony Robbins events. And I remember him saying that people overestimate what they can do in a year and massively underestimate what they can do in a decade. And I think that this whole process is just invigorating to know, like, hey, I don't need to be focused on right now, but just over the course of my life. And I've had my dreams list since 2007. It's very different now. I'll take a look at it sometimes. I'm like, I don't even know why that's on there. It's no longer a dream, right? But then there's other ones that I'll look at and say, oh, I can't believe I put that down 7 years ago and I just did it. And it wasn't necessarily intentional, but it was, at least in my awareness.
Yes. I thought about this when you said that. I've kind of imagined your list. So now, is your list on a particular format? Is a way that you keep it or that you recommend?
So let's see if I have it within reach. Oh, I don't. Normally, I have my dreams journal right here on my desk, but I have where it started. I had a Google Doc, right, or an Excel file at first. Then I moved it into a Google Doc so I can access it from my phone. And then now I have a journal that looks like, it's not this one, but looks like one of these. It's a dreams journal, and it's just got all the categories and everything written in there. Oh, yeah. And then I'll, twice a year, I'll go through and say, like, in the next 6 months, what are the ones I'm going to get done? And my wife and I do that together.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And hearing your process helps the listener think about ways they can do it in addition to going through your book. Yeah. So now, in what ways the book reflect a part of who you are?
So I think that's a great question. I think the way that it reflects most is that it's just a different way of living. It's not if we're not really intentional, what happens is we just kind of like, I'm using air quotes here for a listener, but it's like, where did the time go? I don't want to be the person. I've never wanted to be the person that, at some point in my life is like, oh man, that the time just flew by. I don't know what happened. I don't want to be the person that, 10 years later is like, looks at a photo of myself and says, what happened? And it's like, oh, you gained 5 pounds a year every year, which didn't seem like a lot, but you just weren't intentional with your health. And here you are. And so I think that I was like that in younger years, but didn't necessarily have the language to articulate that. And then through, my own work on with personal growth and just working on me, that got captured into the culture that we've had in our organization. And I had no purpose of ever writing the book with it. It was just, hey, this was in 2012 when I set up our culture around that, and I renamed our team the North Star Dream Team. And the idea was, this is the last time I want to move with the company. So if I were to build a culture that I'm going to be in for the next, we'll call it 20 years, what would keep me excited that I wouldn't have to change the culture? And that's when I settled on that. And then through the pandemic, our team thrived. And there's a lot of things that we had set up within the culture that I didn't necessarily recognize would play out the way they did in a positive way. And that's when I had a friend that was like, very encouraging of, you need to put this into a book and that needs to be out there. And so it's led to some really awesome things for me. Like I said, every time I get the opportunity to work with, I get on 2 days from now, I'm going to Minneapolis to do work with UPS. and I get to run one of their teams through the exercise. And it's like that. I mean, there's no part of me that feels like work doing that. That's such an enjoyable process for me.
Yes, I love that story. And tell your friend thank you
Yeah.
for encouraging you.
I tell him that often.
And then thank you from me.
I will.
And so before your friend mentioned the idea of writing a book, had you ever thought about a book?
I had thought about a book, but in my mind, it was that'll be in my later years after I am my plate is clear, the kids are out of the house, that type of deal. And I had some misconceptions about the process of writing a book, thinking it was just me on my own. And my friend also has written and published a very successful book. His was on the top 10 on Wall Street Journal and really did amazing with it. And so his confidence behind it helped me realize like, oh, this is something I don't have to wait on.
Yeah. It always helps to have that support and belief from others. All right. So you have a lot of experience, but particularly around this notions of dreams. What would you say to the author, and the audience is primarily women? I say primarily women and a few good men. But authors building their business around their book, what could you say to them from your notions and your work with dreams that will help them in their journey?
I think a couple things. I think one is give yourself the time and space to imagine what would it look like if it were wildly successful. Because that's not typically the voice that we have in our head on a regular basis. It's usually the other, which is, what's it going to look like when you fall on your face? And what's it going to look like when it doesn't go the way you want it to? And what does it look like? And so I think it's really important that we're intentional with, hey, for this chunk of time in my schedule once a week, I'm just going to entertain the idea of what awesome success would look like with this. And I also think that it's when we really boil down to like, why am I doing something? For me, it's not a monetary thing. Monetary is great. And it maybe is a scoreboard for which that we're able to look and say, how am I doing? But in reality, I think most people that write a book or have a desire of doing that, it's like, I want to make an impact. I want to change a life like mine has been changed. I have a message I want to share. And so really, like, what is success? It's probably far less than what we are in the moment saying success is. Like, hey, do I have somebody who loves my book that it's made a really big impact on? Yeah, great. Then it was absolutely worth it if it changed that one person's life or gave them some different ideas. So I think it's kind of playing with that on a regular basis. And the other thing, if I could say one more, would be do not be afraid to ask for help. And that's more during the book launch process of, it's difficult to ask people for help. And it was I worked with a book launch company that basically specializes in taking somebody who has no idea launching a book, what they're doing. And, they do this all the time. And so I used a company called NG, and it's a female CEO, Amber Vilhauer. She's awesome. She helped my friend launch his book. And so I remember when I was having one of my first calls with her, she said, I want you to make a list of all the people that you know, look through social media, and we're going to basically ask all of them to help promote. And I had this pit in my stomach that I was like, oh my God, I'm really putting myself out there. And the months leading up to the launch, there was a lot of identity, ego, things going on within that I hadn't really had to deal with in a very long time. And at the end, it was very healthy for me to be able to see how many people were like, yeah, absolutely, I'll help you out, right? And just knowing that people are going to be more than happy to be supportive of what you're doing. And if not, they're going to forget that you even asked 30 seconds later. But what's funny is I teach people in Cutco to do that. Hey, make a list, call some friends and family for help. And all of a sudden the tables were turned to me, and I hadn't done it in 20 years. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I got to do this again. But it was sobering, and it was also very exhilarating as it was happening.
Yeah, good for you for doing it. It is putting yourself out there in the way that you all do. And so it's kind of exposing you and your thoughts. And anybody,
100%.
Yeah, if you've written a book, you put all this kind of blood, sweat, tears, and emotions and yourself in it. And now you're asking people to, take a look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's great. That's very valuable advice for all of us. Now, as you know, the podcast is Leadership Purpose. Do you think having a sense of purpose is important? And if so, why? Or if not, why not?
Well, I think 100%. And I think that it's also okay if your purpose changes. In other words, we don't need to be married to like, this is it forever. But I do think it's really important to have purpose, because that purpose is able to give us that, it's almost like the compass for our decisions. And in going back to like, hey, why am I doing what I'm doing? And if I'm really clear on what my purpose is, that gives me that, like, call it the North Star of like, hey, am I making decisions that are aligned with the reason that I'm here? And if we don't have that, it's really easy to, be out of alignment with maybe our personal integrity, or make a decision for profit over people in a moment that you look back on later and say, why did I do that? And so I find that when I have purpose of, hey, what am I doing? And for me, it's been the same for a while, which is the mission of the book, which is my purpose is to live the life of my dreams and hopefully inspire others to do the same. And so if I'm doing those, it also gives me permission to, live differently, if you will, because by doing so, I feel that it also, opens up that doorway to other people.
Yes. And I completely resonate with that as I'm writing a book, making purpose-based decisions. So I'm very much in alignment with your thinking in that regard. Dane, you have offered so much wealth of inspiration and knowledge and information. Is there something I haven't asked you that you want to talk about before we tell people how they can get in touch with you?
That's a good question. I don't think that there's anything that I feel is left out. I love that this is for, call it, aspiring or already authors that are looking to get it out. And I'd say, you're probably 1 to 2 connections away from somebody that can really accelerate the growth of your success post-launch.
I love that. And you discovered that by reaching out to all the people and just how it's out there. That's wonderful. All right. So if people are interested in hearing more about your book or getting your book, The Dream Machine, or just being in touch with you, how can they connect with you?
So I'm pretty active on Instagram. That's kind of the only social media. I'm on LinkedIn as well, but on there, Dane Espegard, and I'll typically like feature a dreamer of the week and different things as well on there, which is fun for me anyways. But then my website, which is daneespegard.com. If somebody wants to get the book, they can definitely go and buy a hard copy on Amazon, but I'm also giving away free like PDF versions on my website. So if somebody just goes to daneespegard.com/free gift, they can get a free downloadable PDF of the book.
Well, that's generous of you. Really generous of you. So you have it, everybody, and you'll see that in the show notes. Dane, I know you have a lot going on, and we talked a little bit before about everything you're going on. So I appreciate you for taking the time out of your important work to share with us here today. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, everyone. And if you want to reach me, you can contact me on my website, robinlowens.com. Or if you want to reach me on social media, you can find me at your favorite social media channel at Robin L. Owens, PhD, Robin L. Owens, PhD. And if you happen to be an author who wants to turn your book into a masterful course, I have a free video program that you can go through quite easily on my website, createmasterfulcourses.com, createmasterfulcourses.com. All right, until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Dr. Robin signing off. See you next time.